Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're gonna talk about a more abstract concept that doesn't have as much to do with the game. Today we're going to be defining more of a key of coaching, or at least trying to. So if we start off, what would really make for a good coach? So a lot of you might say game knowledge, which is a fair point to make, yes, but game knowledge in itself, if you're speaking of game knowledge specifically, you would think stuff like, I don't know, champions or numbers or something. But a good coach, I mean, it's good to know these things, but I don't think that you are necessarily a bad coach if you don't know them. An example being someone like LS, oftentimes he won't know like numbers or I don't know what a champion does or whatever. But it's not like you would really say he's a bad coach because of it. You might still think he's a bad coach, but I doubt that is the reason why you think so. Okay, let's go with something like understanding of fundamental concepts in League. Like, okay, this is going to be a pretty big requirement, right? So, understanding how to use your time efficiently, collecting resources, understanding trading, whatever else. Like, all the fundamentals. Okay, that's a pretty big one. Sure. A strategic outlook for the game. That's something that's a plus, but I would still say that you can still be a fine coach without this. Because if you think about it in a way where you evaluate this, okay, I mean, your coach can teach you strategy, or I mean, he can also not. He can teach you other things also. And it's not like every coach's end goal is to teach you how to become a rank 1 player. Every coach doesn't have to be a coach that can get you to rank 1. Like, you can have a coach that's better for you, who can only get you to, I don't know, like Diamond 4. Say, in real life sports, you have a coach for your children's baseball team or something. He doesn't need to be a world champion baseball player. He just has to be good enough for your kids to like improve and eventually get decent. But as long as he's teaching them the good things at the start, that's fine. Being able to explain things simply and probably adapting to clients. This is a pretty big one, I think, because here, with some clients you can banter, with some you can't. This is something that LS really fails to do because he will banter and be too abrasive with pretty much every client, while you have a lot of people who just don't really need that in their life. And I think adapting to people is like pretty good. And it's a pretty important thing, yeah. It's just a people skill. So pattern recognition is something I would add. The reasoning being because if you have good pattern recognition, I think you can spot patterns where your client is either doing well or badly pretty early on into a session, so might be able to help your client a bit more. You also might be able to help them develop new patterns. Okay, so next thing I would like to talk about is understanding keys about Gelo. So, for example, a lot of my friends haven't been below, say, Master in legit years. The lowest people they've played against is like Diamond 4, and that's the worst player they can possibly imagine. The worst player they can imagine is a Diamond 4 player. Anything below that, to them, is basically like an NPC. Like, it's just a non-player character. It's just a minion. So for those people, it's a bit harder to help those people because they don't really get what those people experience inside of games. So I think that this can be a helpful part of being a coach. Okay. So this is the only thing that I would consider coaches to need to teach in terms of mechanics. Obviously, you can also teach people how to hit better skill shots. You can teach them how to overblock better. You can teach them how to like approach dodging better, whatever else. But I think all of that in the end is going to end up as part of this. And that's knowing how to figure out a consistent setup to make the game more simple to play. So even if you have a champion that's a bit more mechanical, there are still setups that make the champion a lot easier. The same thing happens in like shooter games. Like you could have your players always like, I don't know, like try to line up their smokes and Molotovs and whatever else and figure it out, bro. Just figure it out in game, it's fine. But these people just learn them and then they just use the setup. Obviously, sometimes you're not going to get to use the setup and you're going to have to figure it out yourself, but you try to use them as much as you can if you're not a very mechanical player. But I think the most important thing of coaching is knowing how to coach and not analyze. Not do analysis, right? Like, I don't want the person that's coaching to do analysis. Analysis would be the stuff that I do in VOD reviews or something, where you look at the VOD, you look back on the play, you evaluate the play. You say, yeah, maybe you should flash here. Yeah. Maybe you should use your spell here. Okay, bro. Maybe you should use your spell differently, bro. That's not useful. And these things only teach me what to do in one situation. I'm figuring out what went wrong in this situation. I'm figuring out like what I could do better in the situation. But at the end of the day, that's not that useful. Obviously, it's good to figure out what went wrong in situations, but it's not the end all of a coaching session. You really don't need to do that. Because, okay, like most clients will figure out that, yeah, I mean, if you flash, you would live. You can tell them that. Okay, that's fine. If you flash, you would live. But you don't need to make that the end point of the coaching. Because telling someone that flashing Malphite ult would make them win does not make them improve as a player. Like, it just really doesn't. Like, everyone knows that if you flash Malphite ult, a Malphite ult won't hit you, and then Malphite is pretty useless. And then, okay, cool, bro. But it's just not the point. The point is to tell the player what they should do instead, and to build better habits rather than whatever they were doing, which requires them to react to a Malphite ult and flash it. I don't know, whatever that is. Obviously, at some point, it's just not possible to avoid some stuff. Like, some stuff is just gonna have to be mechanically done, and I'm gonna talk about that in a bit. So let's say that obviously there we could list other things for what makes a good coach, but let's just say these things for now. So if we say that these are the things which make a good coach, right? And we say that a good coach can just, like, I don't know, get us to a pretty high level. So how is Neace doing on this, right? Would you say he has good game knowledge? I think his game knowledge is like fine, maybe. It's like fine. Understanding of fundamental concepts in game. I think that he's doing pretty good on this. I think his fundamentals aren't too bad. I think it's fine. A strategic outlook on the game. I mean, I think he's doing like fine on this also. Fine or maybe good. I don't know really. But it's not doing like too bad, right? Because the champions he plays and the way that he plays, it forces him to think. So, should be something. Being able to explain things simply or adapting to clients, I'm not too sure about this. But as far as I know, I think he does fine on this also. Pattern recognition, I don't know. I don't know how good or bad he is on this, but I think with understanding the keys about each elo, he should be fine. But knowing consistent setups to make the game less mechanical, I think here he kind of falls through. I think this is like pretty mech/bad. And knowing how to coach and not do analysis, this is like 50-50. Sometimes I see him do analysis and sometimes I see him do coaching. But you see, a big issue with the way that Neace coaches is that he does live coaching, right? He does a lot of live coaching. And the issue with live coaching is that if you're not able to play the champion that you're live coaching to a good level, it's going to be pretty hard for you to make your client do really well on that champion. And I think the biggest benefit of live coaching is that you're able to show a player how he can take this champion and use it to do really well in a game. That's why I only offer live coaching for champions where I know I'm very good on them. For example, Evelyn, I wouldn't even offer it on Nilly. Even though I'm quite good on Nilly, I wouldn't offer it because Nilly is just too mechanical, so I can't make the client make the setup properly. So, for example, Evelyn, I would do that with something like Ashe, something like Oriana I would be willing to, and stuff like that, where the champion is simple enough, let's say, or maybe like Annie or something. The champion is simple enough to where me telling the player what they need to do will make the player perform well, and then the player can feel the difference, right? They've already gone through the motions, they've done it, they can feel the difference, and now if they keep practicing in a similar way, they should be able to adapt their gameplay to be more like that, what we just did, right? But the issue I have here is that Neace does this for pretty much every champion, and because he does it for most champs, I don't really believe that his clients always go like 20-0. Like, for example, this game, like, what do we see here? His client has like an okay performance. It's not like anything special. It's like, okay, 11-8. Like, I don't think his client's going to learn how to stomp a game from this and like how to do really well in his champion. I feel like this is more of a how to do okay. And the issue with this is that you're trying to teach two things at the same time. You're trying to get the product of a live coaching session where you would get that feel and whatever, and you're also trying to teach the product of a VOD review where, or well, you would do a client's VOD review where you would try to find the patterns of what the client is doing bad or well, and then you would try to show them why they're good or bad, and you would try to instill a new way of doing things where they would be able to improve with it, and you would also maybe give them like a routine which would help them with improving those things, right? So with that, I think that the way that he approaches coaching is not the best, and I'll give him like minus points for that. It's a minus approach. So in the end, we're gonna say like he averages to like a fine coach, right? I wouldn't say that he's exactly a bad coach, but I wouldn't say that he's a very good one either. But now the question is, what does a fine coach really mean? If the things that he is doing fine in are the things that we listed, right? And he has a good understanding of fundamental concepts, that probably means he's a good coach for low elo, right? For anyone below, say, Diamond, which is 99% of the player base, he's a pretty good coach. Now, the other question is he worth $350? No. Just, no. Like, his coaching itself is not worth $350. His time, though, you can argue is worth $350. But the knowledge that he brings is not. The way that you would evaluate knowledge from a coach would be with how much that knowledge is worth itself. So this would usually happen based on where you are and where that knowledge can get you. So if you're like a bronze player and someone gives you the knowledge that would get you to silver, that knowledge is not worth very much because almost any knowledge that you get that's just not wrong about the game would get you to silver if you're bronze. Pretty much almost anything that people told you would get you to silver. The same thing pretty much with silver to gold and whatever. So in those elos, it's not really worth much. But now, if you were the rank 2 player in the world, and I was the rank 1 player in the world, and I was willing to give you my knowledge, which separates me from you, which makes me rank 1 and you rank 2, that would be, you could argue that is worth much more than $350. At least I would consider it so. I would say that that is worth much more. So in certain situations, coaching could be worth a lot of money itself, the actual knowledge that you can attain through the coaching. But for most people in most situations, it's just not going to be worth more than, say, $100. The reason I say $100 is a good cutoff is because $100 is where most of the coaches with a decent understanding of the game or a good understanding of the game price their coaching, and then they will be willing to sell that coaching to even high elo players. But also, if you're low elo, you pay them the same amount because that's what their time and knowledge combined are worth. And also, you get a guarantee that what they tell you is pretty good. So the conclusion on Neace would be that while he's a pretty good coach for low elo, he's not worth the price that he's setting for himself, and he's also not a very good player. And there's no way that he's climbing above Diamond in Korea for the main reason of him not being too good on knowing consistent setups to make the game less mechanical, because his mechanics are really bad and his approaches to fights are sometimes fine, but oftentimes really mediocre. And if you don't know how to fight and you have bad mechanics in Korea, it's going to be really difficult to climb. I honestly think it's already quite good that he got to like high diamond in Korea. I mean, maybe he would get a bit higher if he like found something that works for him. I don't know, or he improved. But at the moment, I don't see that happening. But high diamond is pretty good considering his fighting ability, and it shows like a decent understanding of at least some macro concepts. So that's why I would consider him a pretty good coach until Diamond. And next I'll go with someone like Cookie, which I think that both of them have the potential to be good coaches, because I feel like, or well, I believe that the best coaches and the best people to watch oftentimes are going to be the people who have pretty mediocre mechanics, because those are the people that are the easiest to copy. The worse mechanics someone has, the easier it is for you to copy them. And I believe that Cookie has some of the worst ADC mechanics in Shell and EOS. I think that mechanically, just pure mechanics, he is one of the worst ADCs in Challenger. So I would say that he is a really good person to watch, and that's why I always recommend him as a source of ADC information and coaching and whatever. Though obviously it doesn't mean that he is the most knowledgeable player in the world, right? Like, it just means that his playstyle is much easier to copy than a lot of other playstyles that other players have. And playstyles are, you can believe they're real or not, but they're something that people do utilize. If we continue with this thought, then I would say that stuff that Cookie makes is pretty fine, but I would also consider him a coach for people who are lower than him mostly, while I wouldn't really recommend his coaching to anyone above Master. But I mean, that's for each person to decide for themselves. Though I have watched much more of him than I have of Neace, and that's my conclusion at the end. As for these things I think that he does a lot better than Neace, and at the end of the day, if you're really going to pick between these two, then you should go with the latter option. But either way, if you're someone who is below, let's say, diamond, there's no reason why you should ever pay more than, I don't know, $50 for one coaching session. There's just no reason. And if you're below master, I don't think it should ever be above like, I don't know, like 70, 80. And that's like the high end for both of these. I think it should be something like that. If you're paying more than that, then just realize that you're paying for the person's time, and because you want to be sure that that person gives you good information, so pick someone who's going to be really good if you're paying above it, because if you pick someone who's mediocre or bad and you're paying more than that, then, I mean, it's just not a good use of your money, is it? I would like to go through a quick little part of Neace's coaching. It's kind of interesting, honestly. So I would just like to watch a little bit of it. So for some reason, not sure why really, but for some reason he's telling his client to do like 3 camp on Viego. Not really sure why he would do this, as this guy seems to be pretty low elo and just ball clearing would be more consistent, because the most important thing to do when you're lower elo is to become as consistent as possible, because if you're consistently bad, you can improve that. If you're consistently good, then that's just good. But if you're inconsistently bad or good, then that's kind of hard to improve, because sometimes you do well and sometimes you do bad, and it's like hard for you to track your progress and everything else. And the biggest difference between like really low elo players and high elo players is usually consistency. That's like the biggest first difference that strikes everyone.
Now, in that situation, you want to go to chickens here, by the way, because he's going to be on top side.
Okay.
And I don't want to bump into him when we're kind of low.
He tells the client to use chickens. Okay.
Where everybody starts.
And this.
Go to bottom. And this should be away from Master Yi, because he shouldn't be down here with us. If he is, we'll just, have to walk away. I don't want to fight him.
Okay.
I would gank. Oh, he's diving. Oh, hello. Move your camera. Yeah.
So somehow this happens. And then now, like, he's telling him to grab Viger, but it makes 0 sense whatsoever. For example, like, this is my analysis of a situation. It's not actual coaching, but it makes 0 sense, because like, you're gonna spend like a full second possessing Viger, and for what? You can just walk up to Yi.
Okay, that works. That's fine.
What's the point?
He's down there, but whatever.
You can get all your spells back anyway.
Okay. About the body, because
But this is just a lack of knowledge on the champion.
That's how you learn, though.
Yep, you're right.
I would gank mid again, or I would move my camera at least first. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sweep. Walk right up at her. She's backing. Walk at her. She can't see you yet. Throw your E. Find a stun, and then leave. You don't have to die if. Okay, that's fine. That was good. Nice. That was well done. That was clean, because you left just in case you got stunned or something, right? Like.
Yeah.
It was a good attempt.
That whole sequence made 0 sense. Like, you shouldn't be telling your client that he did good just because he got a kill. It makes no sense.
Sweep. Walk right up at her. She's backing. Walk at her.
Like,
She can't.
first of all, like, the fact that he's not looking at lanes is just catastrophic. So, that's the first thing you should, like, be flaming him for. Not flaming, but just telling him, like, that's not okay, man. And then, like, this is just illegal.
And then leave. You don't
Like,
have to die.
what?
Okay.
It's just illegal.
Find a stun, and then leave. You don't have to die if
Like, we have no clue if Syndra has any summoner spells and nothing. And if she just cancels base, nothing happens.
That was good. Nice. That was well done. It was a good attempt. Now just you need to get around a corner and back. I don't want to stay out of the map this long. All right.
It's interesting, but okay.
No, we went the chickens and walk right behind.
Then we're doing some random stuff, and then okay,
Fed right now,
we're going mid.
We're gonna look at this.
Okay. Like, why?
Quick peek on mid, and then we can go to wolves. Okay, she has no vision, so just calmly walk it in. This is great. It's alright, it's alright, it's alright, it's alright. You don't have to stay though. You don't have to stay. Just leave, just leave. Wolves,
Okay.
wolves, 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 wolves. You don't have to stay though. You don't have to.
You see, and here,
Okay, she
like,
has no vision, so
this is what I mean by him not having a concept of making things less mechanical. Like, you don't need to force yourself to instantly W the enemy Syndra, and you also don't need to open with it. You're most likely going to get eat by Syndra. If he gets eat right now, his W just cancels.
it's alright, it's alright, it's alright, it's alright. You don't have to stay though. You don't.
But you can just open with your spells. Like, walk up, auto, Q, auto, W, auto. Like, your mid laner is too far anyway, like, just chunk enemy. But both of them have the wrong idea.
It's alright, it's alright, it's alright. You don't have to stay though. You don't have to stay.
Like, that's the thing.
Wrong way, but that's alright.
So it's like, this is what I...
It's important that we try to keep our pathing like synced. So go ahead and use your Q.
But this is what fucks him up, because you can't life coach and also tell the things that you would tell the client in a VOD coaching session. So because he does life coaching, he ends up being forced into these holes where he has to keep going with it and just move on to the next thing, because he doesn't have time to explain stuff. Because if he spends like the next 2 minutes explaining why whatever he did like just prior to this was bad, what's gonna end up happening is that he's going to at some point be like 10 minutes in the past explaining things, and his client isn't going to be focusing on the game at all. So the game is just going to be void and useless. So I think that with the way he does coaching, there is no reason for anyone above, say, Diamond to get his coaching. I think people from Iron to Plat can use it, but it's really not worth the money. If you get it for free, I mean, it's not too bad if you get it for free, because, like, to give credit where credit is due, he did get, like, I think Grandmaster or something on NA, and he got, like, D2 on Korea. And he did demote in preseason, but he also played random stuff in preseason, so that's fine enough for like Diamond 4 on other regions. But if you're above that, no. I think this really shows, though, a good way to explain why some coaches are bad and other coaches are good, and why also most coaches are bad, because most coaches are just lacking in these. Like, most coaches, this is just non-existent. Like, half of what people do, and they call it coaching, is analysis, because they look at the situation and they tell you something that's just analysis of the situation, like, oh, the situation is bad, or oh, you should use a spell like this, or something. Like, if you're Rihanna and your coach tells you that you should Q here, it's time to run, man. But if your coach tells you that your standard combo, which you can apply to the situation also, is like, I don't know, QWE, which procs phase rush and allows you to kite, is that, and then the reason that you can apply it is because the enemy champion is Silas and you need to kite him and do damage to him. And you can also apply it if the enemy champion's another melee champion which tries to all in you or whatever. Okay, that's fair enough. That's coaching. But telling you to do either QWE or telling you to, I don't know, hit them or run away or something, that's not really coaching. I mean, I won't talk about half of these, but I'm gonna say that also this one doesn't exist for most coaches. So most coaches are working with these, and then it's like a question of how good they are on these. But there are obviously some people who are outliers, but most are just doing bad on the other stuff. And then a lot of them are doing like mech on these, so in the end, most coaches end up being not ideal, but it is what it is. So that concludes this video. If you enjoyed it, like and subscribe, and tell me what you'd like to see next time. See ya.